She helped an old fruit seller. Her friend mocked her. The truth made her a billionaire. Before we begin the story, please leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The sun had barely risen over the sleepy town of Harmony, Texas, when Grace Miller stepped out of Sweet Crumbs, the bakery where she worked. Grace, 23, gentle and soft-spoken, had always believed kindness was free, but that belief was about to cost her more than she imagined. Vanessa Reed, her childhood friend and co-worker, followed behind, phone in hand, chewing gum like she owned the sidewalk. Unlike Grace, Vanessa didn't care about small talk, small towns, or small people. Always early, Grace smiled, sweeping the storefront. "I don't come early to save the world," Vanessa said, rolling her eyes. That's when they saw her. An old woman, bent and trembling, was dragging a cart full of bruised fruit, apples, peaches, and a few sad bananas. She looked like she hadn't had help in years. "Excuse me," the woman said weakly. "Could you help me just to that corner? My hands are failing me." Grace took one step toward her. Vanessa blocked her. "Grace, seriously. You'll be late again. Don't start. She needs help. She needs a strong back, not a bakery girl trying to play saint." Grace ignored her and crossed the street. "Let me help you, ma'am." It took 5 slow minutes to push the cart, but for the old woman, it was everything. When they reached the stand, she looked into Grace's eyes and whispered, "You'll be rewarded one day. I promise." Grace smiled politely, not knowing that promise was more real than she could ever guess. But when she walked back into the bakery, that warmth vanished. Mrs. Jenkins stood waiting, arms folded. "You're late." "Again. I helped an old lady. She ran off with some guy." Vanessa cut in smoothly, eyes cold. "They were laughing near the fruit stand." Grace froze. "That's not true," Vanessa shrugged. "I just say what I saw." Mrs. Jenkins sighed. "Grace, I expect more from you. We run a business here." Grace's chest tightened. Her best friend had just thrown her under the bus, in front of their boss. She said nothing. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Dough was kneaded. Cookies baked. Orders boxed. But between Grace and Vanessa, the silence screamed louder than words. That afternoon, Grace peeked out the window. The old woman was still there, selling fruit, waving gently. Grace smiled faintly. She had no idea that wave was the beginning of everything. Grace didn't sleep well that night. Vanessa's lie echoed in her head. She ran off with some guy. Not only was it cruel, it worked. Mrs. Jenkins didn't say much, but Grace knew her trust had cracked. The next morning, Grace arrived even earlier, hoping to make up for it. She swept the entire sidewalk, restocked shelves, and even handled 2 customer orders before Vanessa walked in. 10 minutes late, yawning, unapologetic. "Morning, superstar," she said, tossing her purse behind the counter. Grace didn't respond. Vanessa leaned in. "Still mad? Come on." "You know how it is. Business is business." "No," Grace said quietly. "Friends don't lie to get ahead." Vanessa snorted. "Grow up. Life's not some fairy tale where kindness gets you a crown." That hit deeper than Grace expected. 2 days later, the bakery buzzed with an unusual energy. A black luxury SUV parked right in front, and a woman in tailored clothes stepped out, followed by a tall man in a crisp blazer. The bell above the bakery door jingled. Vanessa froze. Grace looked up and gasped. It was the old fruit seller. But she wasn't dragging fruit anymore. She was glowing. Strong posture. Designer handbag. Expensive perfume. A completely different woman. And the man beside her. "Good afternoon," the woman said with warmth. "We're looking for Grace Miller." "That's me," Grace said, still stunned. The man extended his hand. "Ethan Carter, my mother told me about you. You helped her when others didn't. Vanessa blinked. Carter? The name sounded familiar. As in Carter Technologies? One of the wealthiest families in Texas. Ethan smiled at Grace. I'd love to buy you lunch. As a thank you. Grace was too shocked to answer. Margaret handed her a business card. Call me anytime. I'd like to support your baking dream. They left as quickly as they came, leaving behind silence and tension. Vanessa turned slowly. You have her number? Grace nodded. She just gave you her son. Like that? No, Grace replied, suddenly guarded. She just offered kindness, something you wouldn't understand. Vanessa didn't reply, but her eyes said everything. That night, Grace sat on her bed staring at the card. Should she call? Would it be weird? Too forward? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hi, Grace. This is Ethan. Just wanted to say it was nice meeting you. Would love to treat you to lunch. No pressure. Let me know. Her heart skipped. She replied, Tomorrow at noon. At the bakery the next morning, Grace floated through her tasks. She picked her outfit carefully. A peach-colored dress she sewed herself with embroidered cuffs. Simple, but elegant, Vanessa noticed. Date with a billionaire? She asked, smirking. Grace didn't answer. At noon, Ethan arrived, this time in a sleeker car. He got out, opened the door for Grace, and waved politely at Mrs. Jenkins. From the window, Vanessa watched, eyes narrowed, fists clenched. The restaurant was elegant, but Ethan wasn't showing off. He listened, asked real questions, and smiled when Grace talked about her dream of owning a bakery that trained young girls in small towns. You're different, he said. You mean small town different? Grace teased. No, he smiled. Good heart different. When he dropped her off, he said, I'll be in touch. I think there's something special in you. Grace couldn't wait to share. She ran into the bakery's back room, where Vanessa was scrolling her phone. Vanessa, you won't believe. I believe everything, she cut in. Trust me, she smiled sweetly. Too sweet. Can I borrow your phone real quick? She added. Grace, still caught in her excitement, handed it over without thinking. Vanessa walked to the restroom. 5 minutes later, she gave it back. Nothing seemed wrong. But that night, while Grace slept peacefully for the first time in days, Vanessa was awake. She had copied Ethan's number. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she called. Hi, you don't know me. But I'm Grace's friend, and you're making a huge mistake. Pause. Everyone in town knows what she does. Ask around. Almost every guy in this street's been with her. Long silence. Then she added coldly, just telling you the truth. Click. Vanessa sat alone in the dark, heart pounding, knowing what she'd just done could change everything. And that was exactly what she wanted. The next morning, Grace was glowing. Ethan had promised to call again. He said he wanted to help her grow. For once, things felt hopeful. As she packed fresh loaves into the bakery's front display, her phone rang. It was Ethan. She smiled and answered, Good morning. But his voice wasn't warm. Grace, can we talk? She paused. Sure. What's wrong? Ethan took a breath. Last night, someone called me. They said you're not who you appear to be. That you've been with many men in your area. That you're using me. Grace's heart stopped. What? They said every guy on your street has been with you. Her hands trembled. That's a lie, Ethan, I swear, I've never been with anyone. There was silence. Then softly she whispered, I'm a virgin. More silence. Finally, Ethan said, Do you know who would say something like that? Grace swallowed hard. Then it clicked. Did they say they were my friend? Yes, her voice cracked. It was Vanessa. 30 minutes later, a black car pulled up outside Grace's house. Ethan got out, fuming. Grace followed, barely holding back tears. They knocked on Vanessa's door. She opened it in her robe, holding a cup of coffee. Her face froze. "Ethan, Grace. What's going on?" Ethan didn't wait. "Did you call me last night and lie about Grace?" Vanessa's eyes darted. "What?" "No. Why would I? You told me she was a prostitute, that every man in your neighborhood had slept with her." Vanessa's jaw tightened. Her lie had been exposed. "I was just angry," she whispered. "Why?" Grace asked, tears now falling. "Why would you do that to me?" Vanessa looked away. "Because I liked him too. And you always get everything. People love you, trust you, praise you. And now this. This guy shows up with a rich mom and gives you attention. I just wanted something for myself." Grace shook her head in disbelief. "You were like a sister to me." Ethan stepped back. "You're not a friend. You're poison." They walked away. Vanessa slammed the door behind them. But the damage was already done. That evening, Ethan texted, "I need some time. I still believe you, but I need space." This whole thing shook me. Grace didn't reply. The next day, Mrs. Jenkins pulled her aside. "There's been a lot of chatter," she said carefully, "about your reputation. I don't like drama in my shop." Grace's lips trembled. "It's not true." "I know. But customers talk. And Vanessa, well, she's saying things I can't ignore." "You believe her?" "I believe this is bad for business." "Maybe it's best if you take time off." Grace stood silently. She took off her apron, folded it, and walked out. Her world was falling apart because of one phone call. She packed her things that night. Her small room, once full of hope, now felt like a cage. She called her aunt in Austin. "Aunt Linda, is your offer still open? The one where I can stay in your spare room?" "Of course, honey," the voice replied. "Come tomorrow." Grace didn't cry until the bus pulled away from Harmony. She stared out the window as the town disappeared. The bakery, the street corner, the fruit stand. Everything behind her. She had lost her job, her reputation, and maybe even her first chance at love, all because she chose to help an old woman. And because someone she trusted betrayed her completely. In Austin, life was different. No one knew her past. She got a job doing night shifts at a diner. She worked quietly, saved every dollar, and bought a second-hand sewing machine. She sewed in the mornings. Little aprons, custom totes, baby bibs. Sold them online under the brand Grace Made. She didn't post her face, just her hands, her craft, and her heart. Orders were slow at first, but her designs were good. Then, one day, a mommy blog featured her work, and everything changed. Within a year, Grace had 12,000 followers on Instagram, a steady stream of orders, and whispers of local fame. She wasn't rich, but she was rising, and this time nobody could take it from her. Not Vanessa, not lies, not the past. Only forward, only faith, only grace. 2 years passed. Grace no longer looked like the girl who swept bakery floors in Harmony, Texas. She now ran a small but growing brand, Grace Made, from a shared studio in Austin. Her hands were always busy, cutting, sewing, packaging. Each piece was custom, thoughtful, and sold out fast. People didn't just buy her products, they bought the story behind them. A girl with nothing but a needle, some fabric, and a heart that refused to harden. One day, a local TV station aired a feature. Small-town designer making big waves in Austin. Grace appeared on screen, soft-spoken but confident, surrounded by handmade bags and aprons. Her eyes sparkled with quiet pride. That night, Ethan Carter saw her on TV. He sat frozen in his penthouse suite in Dallas, remote in hand, watching the woman he once believed, then doubted, and walked away from. "Grace," he whispered. His mother, Margaret, walked into the room. Ethan turned to her. "Mom, you remember Grace? She's the one from the bakery, the one who helped you." Margaret smiled. "Of course I remember." "Why?" "She's on the news." Margaret leaned closer. When she saw Grace's face, she said one word. "Call her." The next morning, Grace's phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hi, Grace. This is Ethan. I saw your story last night. Can we meet?" "Please." She stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, "You can come by the studio. Tomorrow at 10. Ethan arrived exactly on time. When he stepped inside, he was stunned. The room smelled of fresh fabric and cinnamon. Sunlight poured across a row of neatly arranged handbags. Grace stood behind a long wooden table, measuring fabric, calm and radiant. She looked up. "You found me." "I never really stopped looking," he said quietly. He walked closer. "I owe you an apology." She didn't say a word. He continued. "You told me the truth. I didn't trust you. I listened to someone else, and that was my biggest mistake." Grace looked at him, her voice steady. "And what made you believe me now?" Ethan held up his phone. "This," he said, showing her the TV interview. "And this." He pulled out a paper, Vanessa's recent scandal, fired from a boutique for stealing customer data. Grace blinked. "She's still at it?" "She's spiraling," Ethan said. "But you're thriving." Just then, Margaret entered the studio, holding a bouquet of white roses. "Grace," she said, smiling, "you helped me when I was a nobody to you. I've never forgotten. I knew you were special the moment you refused to take money." Grace's expression softened. "I didn't do it for anything in return." Margaret nodded. "And that's exactly why you deserve it all." They sat and talked for over an hour. Grace shared her vision to open a flagship store in Austin that hired young women, trained them in sewing, and gave them their first chance. Margaret took her hand. "I want to invest." "No strings attached. Think of it as delayed gratitude." Grace hesitated. Ethan added, "We can call it Fruit Thread, the place where kindness began." For the first time in years, Grace laughed. That evening, back in Harmony, Vanessa scrolled through her phone bitterly. She'd seen the interview, then the new headline, "Carter family backs rising designer Grace Miller in major investment deal." Her jaw dropped. Grace, with Ethan, on the front page. Vanessa's apartment was small, messy, dim. Her business was gone. Her name tarnished. People whispered when she walked down the street. She stared at the photo of Grace, smiling in a silk blouse, standing between Ethan and Margaret. Then she cracked. She opened a message. "Grace, I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve to say this, but please, help me. I'm at my lowest. I have no job, no money, no tools. I was wrong. Please, just something to start over." She hit send, then waited. In Austin, Grace stood in her kitchen, stirring a pot of soup when the message arrived. She read it twice. James walked in with 2 mugs of cocoa. "You okay?" he asked. She handed him the phone. He read it, eyebrows raising. "That's bold. I don't know what to do," she whispered. After everything she did, this? He didn't answer right away. Then gently, "You don't owe her anything, but I know your heart." Grace stared at the screen. After all the lies, all the pain, Vanessa was now asking for help. The same girl who destroyed her. That night, Grace sat in her sewing corner and whispered a quiet prayer. She didn't want revenge. She wanted peace. But maybe, The sweetest revenge was becoming everything they said she could never be. Grace couldn't sleep. The message from Vanessa replayed in her mind like a broken record. I'm at my lowest. I was wrong. Please, just something to start over. She sat by the window of her small apartment, warm tea in hand, watching the Austin lights flicker in the distance. Her life now looked nothing like it did 2 years ago. She had money, freedom, and peace. She was designing full-time, and fruit thread was already becoming a buzzword in the boutique scene. But one message had stirred something she thought she'd buried. Not bitterness, but memory. The next morning, Grace walked into her studio early. She plugged in her sewing machine, then stopped. She picked up her phone and typed slowly. Vanessa, I haven't forgotten what you did. You betrayed me, lied to destroy me, and it worked. I lost everything back then, but I didn't stay down. I rebuilt from the ground up, with no help, no pity. She stared at the blinking cursor, then continued. Still, I won't carry hate. Tell me exactly how you want help. She hit send. A few minutes later, the reply came. I just need a fresh start. I swear I've learned. I'm good at sewing. I just don't have anything. No tools, no money. Even if it's small, just help me get a machine. I'll pay you back. I promise. Grace leaned back in her chair. She closed her eyes. She saw herself in that bakery, sweeping the floor, getting blamed. Getting fired. She saw Vanessa lying, smirking. She also saw herself pushing that fruit cart, smiling at a stranger. That moment had changed everything. Maybe helping one more time wouldn't destroy her. Maybe it would define her. Later that day, Grace transferred $5,000 to Vanessa. She added a short message. This is not a loan. Consider it mercy. Use it wisely. Don't become who you were again. No emoji, no fluff. Just truth. Vanessa stared at her phone. The alert glowed on the screen. $5,000 received from Grace Miller. She dropped the phone onto her bed and cried uncontrollably. She hadn't expected it to work, and even if it did, she never thought Grace would give this much. She whispered through her tears, "Why would she help me?" But she knew. Because Grace was the very thing she pretended to mock. Good. That week, Vanessa bought a sewing machine, thread kits, measuring tools, and 3 yards each of soft cotton, satin, and denim. She cleared out a dusty corner of her tiny apartment, set up a foldable table, and began again. The first stitches were clumsy. Her fingers trembled. But by the 4th dress, she remembered. She was still good. And this time, she wasn't sewing with jealousy. She was sewing with humility. 3 months later, Vanessa posted on Facebook, "Sometimes the person you tried to destroy is the one God uses to save you. Grace, I don't deserve what you gave me, but I promise I'll make it count. Thank you." The post went viral in the small business community. People flooded her inbox, asking about her story, her journey, and how she turned around. Some praised Grace. Others were shocked Vanessa even had the courage to post it. But Grace, she didn't comment. She didn't like the post. She just smiled and kept sewing in silence. She knew real healing didn't always need applause. One day, Ethan walked into the studio with coffee. "You saw the post?" he asked. Grace nodded. "Yeah, she's trying." "She is," Ethan smiled. "You made that possible." Grace sipped her drink. "No." "She made the choice. I just gave her a door. She walked through it." Ethan looked at her with admiration. "You're amazing, you know that." She shrugged. "I'm not trying to be amazing, I'm just trying not to turn bitter." Back in Harmony, Vanessa's orders increased. She started making simple alterations for neighbors, then custom dresses. Within 6 months, she saved enough to rent a tiny street-facing shop. She even took in 2 local girls, young, lost, and wandering, just like she had been. She taught them for free, not because she owed anyone, but because someone once helped her without asking for anything back. And she hadn't forgotten. Vanessa sent one last message. Grace, I just wanted to say thank you again. I've paid the rent for 6 months. I get regular customers, and I've started training 2 girls in town. I want to do what you did. I want to be better, Grace replied with just one line. You already are. That night, as Grace prepared her designs for a major upcoming fashion show, she smiled to herself. The same heart that was once broken was now the reason someone else was healing. Not every story ends with revenge. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is rising so high you reach back and lift up even the one who pushed you down. It was a clear, golden afternoon in Harmony, Texas. A black car pulled into the small downtown area, attracting curious eyes. Few people recognized the woman who stepped out at first, until they looked closer. Grace Miller had returned. But this wasn't the girl who once swept bakery floors. Now she wore a flowing cream suit, a silk scarf around her neck, and confidence in her step. She walked like someone who had built something from ashes and now carried light with every move. Inside the town hall, a banner hung proudly, "Welcome to the Harmony Small Business Expo," featuring national guest Grace Miller. Grace had been invited as the keynote speaker. Her story of hardship, hustle, and hope had inspired thousands. She was no longer just a seamstress. She was a name, a brand, a force. The local news station had already set up. Town officials lined the front row. But one person sat in the very back, quiet, unnoticed. Vanessa. She wore a dark green dress she had sewn herself. Neat, modest, humble. Her hair was pulled back, her face calm, but her hands twisted nervously in her lap. She hadn't planned to come, but when the flyer passed through her small shop window last week, her heart knew she had to see it. Not out of guilt. Out of respect. Grace stood at the podium, eyes scanning the crowd. She took a breath. I left Harmony 2 years ago with nothing but a broken heart and a duffel bag full of scrap fabric, she began. Some people chuckled softly. But the truth is, sometimes it takes losing everything to find who you really are. She spoke about the bakery, the betrayal, the pain, but not once did she name names. She focused on the journey, the old woman with the fruit cart, the kindness that started it all. I didn't become who I am because I was the best seamstress, she said, but because I refused to let bitterness shape my future. Vanessa swallowed hard. Tears welled in her eyes. After the speech, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. People swarmed Grace, taking pictures, shaking her hand, thanking her. She smiled, laughed, hugged. But when the crowd thinned, her eyes caught a familiar figure standing near the exit. Half in shadow, Vanessa. Their eyes met. Neither moved. For a second, the world went quiet. Then slowly Vanessa stepped forward. She didn't speak. She simply opened her arms. Grace didn't hesitate. They embraced, no words needed. Not apologies, not explanations, just healing. I'm proud of you, Grace whispered. You gave me a reason to be proud, Vanessa said back. They pulled apart, smiling. 2 girls from the same street, the same town, the same dreams. Later that evening, Margaret and Ethan joined Grace at the local cafe, the same cafe where she once sat with shame and confusion in her eyes. Now, her seat was front and center. The mayor stopped by to personally thank her. 3 high school girls asked for autographs. And across the room, Vanessa quietly sipped coffee and watched, a soft smile on her face. This wasn't envy. It wasn't longing. It was peace. Because for the first time in years, both women were walking the right path, not side by side, but in their own lanes, toward light. Back in her hotel room that night, Grace stood by the window, looking out at the sleepy town that raised her, broke her, and now welcomed her back as someone new. Ethan came up behind her. "That was powerful," he said. "I meant every word." He handed her a folder. Inside was the final paperwork. The official launch of Fruit Thread's first training center in Harmony. A place for girls like she once was. A place for women to start over, no matter what they'd been through. Grace signed it with a smile. Sometimes revenge isn't about making others suffer. It's about rising so high they can't touch you anymore. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they rise too. 3 months later, a grand white tent stood in the heart of Harmony, Texas. Inside, rows of handmade banners lined the walls. Fruit Thread, launching dreams, one stitch at a time. The town buzzed with energy. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was about to begin. Grace stood near the entrance, dressed in a simple linen dress she'd made herself. Her hair was tied back, her face calm, but her heart raced. This wasn't just a business opening. It was a full-circle moment. Right beside her stood Margaret Carter, holding a pair of golden scissors, and Ethan, proudly watching her every move. As the mayor handed her the mic, Grace took a long breath. "When I was 19, I helped an old woman carry a fruit cart," she began. "I thought it was just 5 minutes of kindness. I never imagined it would change my entire life." She glanced at Margaret, who smiled. "Sometimes the smallest moments hold the biggest doors. Sometimes one good deed becomes the seed for everything that follows." The crowd clapped. Some moved to tears. Grace continued. "This center isn't just a business. It's a promise that no girl, no woman, should be denied a future just because she started with nothing." That kindness is never wasted. Applause. Loud. Genuine. Full. As the ceremony ended and the ribbon was cut, the crowd flowed into the new training center. Vanessa arrived quietly, not as a guest of honor, but as a volunteer mentor. She wore a navy apron embroidered with the Fruit Thread logo and led 2 young girls through the sewing machines, showing them how to thread a bobbin. She had come far, not because Grace had rescued her, but because Grace had offered her a second chance, and she took it. That choice had made all the difference. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the town began to quiet, Grace and Ethan sat on the center's front porch, sipping sweet tea. "You know," he said, "most people would have never helped someone who betrayed them." Grace smiled gently. "I didn't do it for her." "Then who?" She looked up at the stars. "For the girl I used to be, the one sweeping floors in a bakery hoping someone would believe in her." He took her hand. "You've become the woman other girls will remember forever." Across town, in a small rented room, a teenage girl scrolled through social media. She paused on a photo of Grace, standing between sewing machines, arms open, smile wide. She read the caption, "From kindness to comeback. From betrayal to beauty. Never stop believing in good." The girl saved the image. One act. One story. One thread. And now it was her turn. Sometimes the people you trust hurt you. Sometimes you fall so hard, you wonder if you'll ever rise again. But remember this, revenge is not always about payback. Sometimes the greatest revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't. And when life offers you the chance, don't just rise. Reach back. Help someone else, because that's where the real power lies. If you were Grace, after all the lies, betrayal, and pain, would you forgive Vanessa? Or would you ignore her message and move on with your new life? Drop your answer in the comments. Like the video if you believe in the power of second chances. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring real-life stories that heal the heart.